Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to talk about Ethereum and the bull market support band, the 20-week SMA and the 21-week EMA. We're going to look at this in terms of its valuation against USD, and we're also going to look in terms of its valuation against Bitcoin to see if there are any insights there. If you guys like the content, please subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. Also, check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Let's go ahead and jump in. So the bull market support band for Ethereum still needs to prove itself in some sense because it has not been around nearly as long as the one we have for Bitcoin. With that said, if you look at the last market cycle, it did tend to respect it for the most part. Okay, when I say for the most part, the obvious time it did not was right here. So in October of 2016, we saw Ethereum go below the bull market support at the wick here about 50%. So in fact, it did not support it the entirety of the last bull market. Therefore, this is the reason I don't talk about it as much as I do with Bitcoin. However, later on, it did seem to respect it. It respected it in July of 2017. It respected it in September of 2017 and October and November. And then finally, when it broke here, it was the bad news bears for the foreseeable future. In recent times, it has done very similar to Bitcoin. It moved above it in March of 2019, April of 2019, it moved above it. Bitcoin also moved above it in April, March 2019. It then broke down below it in July of 2019. Bitcoin also broke down below, but in September. So they're following a fairly similar pattern, not exactly lined up, but fairly similar. And then Ethereum got back above it in January of 2020. Bitcoin got back above it in January of 2020. And then Bitcoin broke back down below in March of 2020. And as we know with Ethereum, it also broke back down below in March of 2020. And finally, the last time it broke above it, which it stayed above it since then, was around $170 back in April of 2020. And for Bitcoin, it also happened in April of 2020 at 77.43. So both assets have followed in the recent times a very strict adherence to the bull market support band as long as it's going to maintain the integrity of the bull market. It did it for Ethereum up here. When we can't get above it, we tend to get shot down. When we break below, we tend to crash pretty hard, like we did here, and then like we did here. If we can hold it as support, we tend to be pretty well off. Here's an example of Ethereum getting above it, moving sideways along it, not too high above it, going back up, sideways until we get to it, back up. We came back down, had a few wicks, testing it as support, ultimately held it, and now we're back up. Where is it today? Well, you can see that right today, the 20-week SMA is at 454, and the 21-week EMA is at 464. So there's about a $10 range there that we would theoretically want to hold to maintain the integrity of the bull market for Ethereum if there is a correction. So if there were a correction from here, we would want to hold it, and it would still be only about 25% down. A modest 25% drop. We're not saying we're going to drop, but of course, you must always be ready for it, just like we had a drop here. You know, we had a drop from this top back in August. We went around 490 and came all the way back down here, 37% drop, and it still did not preclude us from turning right back around and climbing much higher. From this top in August, that many of us remember that wick, we did a live stream following this wick. From that point, we're up 25% almost. So the times can change relatively quickly, and as we said with Bitcoin, confirming the 20-week moving average as support is pretty good. Now, we want to talk about some similarities here because we mentioned, well, it did not hold it here. One of the things we've said before with Ethereum is that it appears in terms of volatility to be one market cycle behind Bitcoin. Another thing I want to point out are some similarities here, right? With Ethereum, we had a peak, we broke down below the 20-week SMA, and then we had another peak. If you go look at Bitcoin, not during this market cycle here, but the one before, it also had some similarities, right? We had we had a peak. It came back down, fell below the bull market support band. And if we were to take a measured move to see how far down below it went, from the 20-week SMA at the bottom of the wick, it fell about 30%. So Bitcoin has also not entirely respected it during this bull market, but this bull market was a lot different than this one. This one was defined as a double peak. We had a peak, a pretty significant correction, but not, it wasn't like a 90% correction or anything like that. A pretty significant correction, and then back up. And during this short-term correction, we ultimately went below the 20-week for a couple weeks back in 2013, but then we quickly got back above it and continued on our merry way. If I remember correctly, for Bitcoin, and I'm just going to put these on here, if I remember correctly, we had two other moving averages that helped us potentially identify this move. So if we look at I believe it was the 50-day and the 200-day. These are typically used for, bull market, golden crosses, that type of thing. So let's just go ahead and put on these two moving averages because I'm pretty sure it was a pretty good indication. So we're going to go look at it on the daily time frame, and we're going to go all the way back to this point. We'll hide the bull market support. And you can see here that we were able to avoid the death cross. So the death cross is when the 50-day goes below the 200-day. And in this situation, we were able to avoid that. The price of Bitcoin quickly got back up, and we avoided the death cross. Okay, so I think that was pretty key back then. Now, anyways, getting back to business here for Ethereum, I digress a little bit. The bull market support band ranges from 464 to 454. So it's a pretty tight range, but I think we would want to hold it as support. Now, one of the things that is interesting is if you look at the bull market support band, the same thing of Ether Bitcoin. Does it respect anything? Not really, right? Not a huge amount of respect. When Ether is pumping like crazy, it tends to stay above it, but that's just, it's just pumping, right? It's not really testing it much. It tends to break below pretty easily, even throughout a bull market. Even throughout a bull market, it can go well below the 20-week SMA and the 21-week EMA against Bitcoin. However, this is one of the things we talked about 8 or 10 months ago. There's the 20-month moving average of Ether Bitcoin. And I think this one's a decent moving average to look at because you can see we did come down to it, held it as support on the monthly time frame. Went back up, came back down, held it as support again, and then came back up. And then once we got below it, it was the bad news bears. This is the 20-week or 20-month SMA. And we talked about this about eight months ago or so. And you might say, well, why did we talk about this? Well, the reason was because we said, well, whenever we break above it, there's a good chance we're going to be off to the races. Okay, off to the races. And the reason, and if you guys want to see these videos, just go back to like February, and we had several videos in a row for several months on this because you can see that we were trying to break it like every single month. Every wick went to this moving average. 1, 2 months, 3 months, 4, and 5. 5 months in a row, the Ether Bitcoin valuation held resistance with a wick at the 20-month Ether Bitcoin moving average. And the only reason we're bringing it up today is because we're getting close to it. We know that we were able to hold it as support in the past. We don't really have a ton of data for it because it just didn't exist over here because we didn't have 20 months of data. With that said, we are getting close to it. And the current level of it is 0.02517. And we're currently at 0.026649. If we were to drop from where we currently are down to this level, it would be a 5% drop, 5 to 6% drop. Now you might look at this and say, well, this is going down. Why is it going down? Well, simple enough. If you take a measured move, going back 20 months, you can see that we're essentially replacing monthly closes at 0.03 and higher with all these different monthly candles in here with monthly closes that are lower. And, because of that, right? Because, I mean, that's one reason, of course. There's also a ton of moving average or a ton of monthly candles in here that are also, very low and are pulling it down. But it certainly does not help things that we are taking higher numbers and replacing them with lower numbers, right? If you just think about taking a 20-week or 20-month moving average and you're just taking, say, like 20 numbers, and you're taking one number out that's higher and placing it with a lower number, then it's going down. And we can see that if it's already going down and we keep doing that, we would expect it to continue going down. We would expect the derivative, of course, to be negative. And with that said, if you look this month, this is 21 months, here's 20 months. So potentially for the next couple months, maybe 3 months, at least, unless there's at least 3 months, we're still going to be around the 0.03 level. So we're not saying that Ether Bitcoin is going to be around the 0.03 level, but at least for the next 3 months, we're going to be replacing these levels with whatever we're going to have over here. Now, with that said, it's not going to take too long for us to start replacing whatever going on up here with what's going on down here when it was much lower at 0.019, 0.017, that general area. Okay? When that happens, and assuming Ether Bitcoin valuation does not just come all the way back down, right, which, is an assumption, then we would expect this to start coming back up, okay? And part of that would be because we're starting to hopefully replace these candles with, hopefully, candles up here. And this is sort of the anticipation of a Q1 move of Ether against Bitcoin. Now, this might be a critical area to watch because we know that we have respected it a lot in the past, right? We have respected it in terms of holding it as resistance to some degree. We had 5 monthly candles in a row that came up basically identically to the 20-month Ether Bitcoin moving average. 5 months in a row, we said whenever we break it, we should skyrocket, and we did. And once we broke through it, we had 2 months where it just shot up. So now we're looking at it and saying, okay, well, right now it's around 0.025. The Ether Bitcoin valuation on the 20-month moving average is 0.025. Might be an area to keep an eye on, considering we did hold it as support during the last bull market, considering that we held it as resistance 5 months in a row. Just something to keep in mind. So hopefully this video has been informative, talking about the Ethereum USD bull market support band, showing that the Ether Bitcoin bull market support band, as defined by the 20-week SMA and the 21-week EMA, is not really that valuable because it tends to just dump below it throughout the market cycle. However, maybe the 20-month Ether Bitcoin moving average is worthwhile to take a look at, considering its historical ability to hold support in a dump or hold resistance in a pump. So if you guys like the content, please subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, check out the Telegram channel in the description below. Remember, we also do have the premium list, which you can find out the holiday sale link to in the description below. Make sure you sign up before the prices go up. You get access to the weekly reports, the weekly premium videos, the Telegram alerts channel, the Telegram chat room, the risk dashboard, the trading view indicators. We're going to have live streams next year for the premium list as well. Make sure you guys check it out if you guys enjoy the show. And at the very least, subscribe to the channel. Let's shoot for 80,000 subscribers. Hopefully we'll get there in a couple weeks. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hope it was useful, and I'll see you next time. Bye.